Hello, I'm Rebecca the Maths Lady, and welcome to this video which is all about teaching primary school aged children to find the mean of a set of values. In this video I'm going to talk about what averages are in general. I'll explain how we develop a deep understanding of what the mean is in terms of it being resharing numbers fairly. I'll explain the standard method for finding the mean and how we teach children why it works. And I'll explain some extension activities that are really worthwhile doing. There are no particular videos you need to have watched before this one, although children will need to be able to add and divide. So you might want to go back to those videos if necessary. And if you do need to find any videos, they can be found at www.authenticmaths.co.uk/videos. Right, let's get started. So we need to start this topic by talking in general about what averages are. The idea that they're about finding typical values. As a teacher, you should have in your mind the idea that there's more than one way of finding an average. And it's useful if when you're talking about this, you can bring your own wider experience to mind. And if you can't remember it, the way most secondary school children remember it is the Hey Diddle Diddle song. Hey diddle diddle, the median's the middle, you add and divide for the mean. The mode is the one you see the most and the range is the difference between. Apologies for my singing, but at least that one's probably not subject to copyright rules, so we can just get on with it. So it's good to explore what that might mean in contexts. So let's say 3 friends had some sweets and one person had 11 sweets, another person had 8 sweets, and we'll say there's a third person and they've got 11 sweets as well. So what's the typical number of sweets? Well, you could argue it's 11 because that's the most common number, and there is a justification for that, and it's really important to put the mean in context. It's not always the best way of talking about typical values, but the mean is definitely one good way of finding a typical value, and here's how we do it. So I'm just going to draw a diagram that represents these situations. One friend has got 11 sweets, the other's got 8, and the third has got 11 as well. Now, how can we make this fair? Well, if each of these people gave the person with only 8 sweets 1 sweet, so if we take those off and pop them here, it's become fair. They've each got 10 sweets, and that's what the mean is. It's about what happens when you reshare your things fairly. So if you've got some simple questions where children have to find the mean of sets of numbers, we can treat those numbers like sweets. The children can work with blocks and build them and try to reshare the sweets fairly to find what the mean is, how many sweets each person gets when those sweets are reshared fairly. Now, it's not always the case that we are finding the mean of objects like sweets. Sometimes we might be finding the mean height of a group of children. And in that situation, it's like you're taking some of the height of the taller children and chopping it off and giving it to the shorter children and redistributing the heights until everyone's the same height and trying to find out what that height would be. Now, the standard method for finding the mean is to add the numbers together and divide by how many numbers there are. And that's a wonderful method because it always works. Sometimes you can't just imagine shuffling objects around and see the answer. So you need this standard method. So what we do here is 11 plus 8 plus 11 equals 30. And then 30 divided by 3 equals 10. So we get the same answer, and we could show that with blocks as well. When we're adding the numbers, we're pushing all the sweets that everyone's got, all those blocks, into a pile in the middle, and then we're resharing them fairly back between the children by dividing this total by the number of children. And sometimes it's not blocks and children, but that logic always works. If we were finding the mean of 5 children's heights, we could get them all to lie down in a line, find the length of that line by adding up all the heights, and then chop it into 5 equal parts by dividing it by 5, and you would find the mean height of a child. So a lot of teachers just teach that standard method. You see the word mean, you add all the numbers up and you divide by how many numbers there are. That's not going to give them really secure foundations for the future. You need to talk more widely about what averages are, give the mean some context, and give children that deep sense that the mean is resharing fairly, and the adding and dividing strategy makes sense because it is a way of resharing fairly. Keep referring to the mean as being the resharing fairly value. So there's a couple of bits of extension work that you can give children. One is that you might say that the mean of 4 numbers is 10, and 3 of the numbers are 3, 8 and 15. Can you find the missing number that will give that mean of 10? And in missing number questions, the insight is always that the total here must be 40, because 40 divided by 4 is 10. So once we know the total, then we can puzzle out the answer to a missing number question in a question about the mean. Another good extension activity is to ask children to find the mean of some heights of children. Here they are: 103 centimetres, 101 centimetres, 106 centimetres, 109 centimetres and 101 centimetres. And can they find any shortcut ways of doing that? Well, if you're imagining finding the mean as being like those original columns of numbers, if you're imagining the heights and we're resharing those heights fairly, then everybody's already got 100 centimetres. So we don't need to worry about the 100 centimetres. That's just going to stay. We've all got that already. That's not moving between the 5 people. We can just focus on the extra bits. So all we really need to do is find the mean of 3, 1, 6, 9 and 1. Well, they add up to 20, and 20 divided by 5 is 4. Therefore, the mean height is 104 centimetres. So there are some lovely mental shortcuts once you have that deep understanding of what's going on. This is beyond the curriculum, but it's really lovely and relevant extension work. And of course, we also want to work across the curriculum with this. And when you're working on the mean, just think through your day and think, what could we find the mean of? It's lovely to set some competitions between groups of children and tell them that you'll be judging them on who's got the quickest mean time for completing the activity. And that could be PE, it could be a run, or it could be a task in pretty much any context in the classroom. And that's it. So in this video, we've talked about how it's important to give a context for averages being typical values and there being other ways of judging that, not just the mean, but we're focusing on the mean, which is the resharing fairly value. We want to give children practical experience of trying to reshare blocks fairly to answer number problems, and practical experience of the standard method of combining all those blocks, adding them all together and dividing by the number of people they're giving them back to reshare fairly and develop their understanding of the standard method for finding the mean. Then we want to apply that in context, hopefully across the curriculum. And finally, there are some great extension activities that you can set children that really will challenge them in relevant ways. And that's it. This is the end of the 4th series of videos on teaching maths to children aged 7 to 11. The series on 4 to 5-year-olds is already complete. The series on 5 to 6-year-olds is already complete. And I'm just going to go back and do a little bit of work on 6 to 7-year-olds. And then I'll be moving on to publishing page per term planning for all sorts of different classes, linked first to the English primary maths curriculum and then to other curriculums and linking into the videos. I've got more worksheets to finish off. I'll come back and do them. And I'll continue to live stream on Sundays and take your questions live. Thank you so much for joining me. If you're able to comment on these videos, give them a like or make your friends and colleagues aware of them, that would be completely awesome. And I hope you'll find other videos on my channel that you'll find useful. Thank you so much for joining me. Take care. Bye for now.